What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbein, joined by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, well, they completed a weekend that I think many of us would say was a success. The 2024 NFL Draft has come and gone, and well, the praise is high when it comes to Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, and their 7 additions in 6 rounds here over the weekend. We're going to dive into what the draft class means for this team, our favorite picks and or free agent signings, what's coming next for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and well, yes, their roster definitely got better, but there still might be some holes that they need to fill before training camp. We'll break it all down. Plus more. It's been a gorgeous weekend here in the city of Pittsburgh. I think that's just because Mother Nature's out here celebrating like the rest of Steelers fans after a successful 2024 NFL draft. How you feel, my friend?
I feel great. I'm a little sunburnt. Played some golf yesterday. I enjoyed that nice weather. That's right. It's right. I'm not very much of a golfer.
I was going to say, you're not a golfer.
Yeah, yesterday was like the first time I'd actually played like a full round. I mean, we didn't go 18 holes. We only went 9, but it was a good time. Just whacking the crap out of a ball for a couple hours was a good time.
Always.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad to hear. Did you keep score? How bad were you? Is this the first time? When was the last time you golfed? That's a good question too.
I think when I was in middle school, quite literally. Good. Maybe I went to I think I actually did go to a driving range one time when I was in college, but it was this was the first time in a long time. I think in more than 10 years that I had actually tried to hit a ball into a hole. I think
that's
we did not keep score.
That's good. I'm glad that you didn't keep score because it would have been bad. But I also am glad that you got out there because golfing is. I think every adult has to get into golfing. Otherwise, what are you doing? Nick, I'm going to toss it down to you here. You golf?
Oh, yeah. Big golfer. Enjoy it. Can only go out like 2 or 3 times a year, but enjoy every second of it when I'm out there.
Are you bad?
Pretty bad, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty bad. I have a really bad slice every single time, and I can move as far left as I want. It's going into the woods on the right side.
Nice. Beautiful.
That's the best part about golf, is you really got to play all the time to get really good at it. But, there's never really, you just always have, 3 or 4 spare hours to go play 18 holes, right? Like that's super easy to do.
Yeah. No, I try to golf really as much as possible. I probably get out about once every other week. I get out to golf, just like a quick 9 or something in the evening. And I could still say that I'm atrocious. So I think that's just, if you're good at golf, man, you're just
it's gotta be such a good feeling, right?
Yeah, like you're blessed. You were given a gift that not many were given. And I'm happy for you, but that's just not on this podcast. Nobody's good at golf at this podcast. That's good, though. I'm happy for you. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers 2024 NFL draft class. They started it with a bang. Troy Fautanu coming to the city of Pittsburgh. They kept it going with Zach Frazier, Roman Wilson, Peyton Wilson, so many Wilsons. We were getting nervous. Who was the Johnny Wilson? We were getting nervous. They were drafting Johnny Wilson. Too many Wilsons on that team, but that's all right. They finish it off with a couple of pretty solid, but I think to some point surprising picks in Mason McCormick, Logan Lee, and then obviously Ryan Watts out of Texas. A great draft class, no doubt about it. Plenty of praise. Filled a lot of holes that they had coming into the NFL draft. I'm going to start with this one. 7 picks come and gone, a couple of free agent signings, a couple of rookie minicamp invites have gone out. Who were your favorite, or who was your favorite pick and or signing from this draft class?
Yeah, I'm going to say, for as far as draft picks, I think Zach Frazier was my favorite. Just because I thought it was no shot that he was going to even make it to 51. So the fact that they didn't have to move up, didn't have to give up anything, and they were able to land a guy who many thought was the best center in this draft. That was a sentiment that started to pick up some steam heading into the weekend, and the Steelers were able to get him for nothing, which obviously he was a draft pick, but that was, I expected them to have to move up pretty substantially in order to land a guy like him. I was really concerned. I loved the Fautanu pick, but I was concerned. I was just thought, okay, what's the plan at center? You got to move up. You're going to have to be able to move up to land either Graham Barton or Zach Frazier. And then outside of that, like how sure are you that any of these other guys, Jackson Powers Johnson as well, if you wanted to get him too,
Yep.
If you were interested in landing any of those guys, I assumed that you had to move up. So to not have to do that and still be able to land Frazier is a home run, the home run of all home runs in my book. And I think as far as undrafted guys, Beanie Bishop, definitely my favorite. I mean, it feels wrong picking the 2 West Virginia guys, but I was really, really excited to see that they were able to get Beanie Bishop. I think he's a really good player. I think he's got some versatility. Probably your slot guy at this point. I mean, as much as I love Ryan Watts, I'm not sure if he's. I think Beanie Bishop just might be better, and I feel like he might be the better candidate to start or play a lot pretty soon.
Yeah. So the Zach Frazier thing, agreed. We were sitting there throughout the entire weekend of the draft, especially on day 2. Like once Jackson, and we talked about this on Saturday, once Jackson Powers Johnson went off the board, we were immediately like, okay, they got to make a move. Here it is. And even Omar said, like, hey, part of this is you got to be patient the whole time. Like, you got to practice patience. You just kind of get a feel of it. I mean, to wait it out for Zach Frazier was a ballsy move that worked out so well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, to not give up any draft capital and come away with the 3rd best center in this draft and a guy that, I mean, some people are saying might be the best center in this draft. Like, that's massive. And then to start it off with Troy Fautanu, that's like your offensive line just got so much better and you didn't have to do anything about it. You just sat where you needed to sit and to get that guy. And then you kept it going with 2 more guys that I don't think many people expected to fall to where they fall. So I 100% agree with that one. My favorite pick in this draft is probably Roman Wilson. Zach Frazier and Troy Fautanu are like the easy answers. So I'm going to try to give a curveball here. I mean, I think I agree with Zach Frazier. Troy is ridiculous. I mean, the whole draft class, but the offensive line as a whole is massive. But I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go Roman Wilson. I think Roman Wilson has the ability to really be anybody that he wants. People are comparing him to Hines Ward. I mean, I think this guy could quickly turn into a Cooper Kupp in the NFL that could play the inside, play the outside, is great route runner, is super physical, can do it all on a football field, reliable hands, great instincts, especially near the red zone. I look at Roman Wilson as a guy that you could be like George Pickens is your wide receiver 1 right now, and I agree with that, but I think Roman Wilson has the ability to be the guy that you could build an offense around, like a passing game around at least, where you could look at it and say, we have the ability to move him anywhere we want to move him and make it work, and therefore we could utilize George Pickens for his strong skill sets, and we could add one more to utilize him for his strong skill sets. But Roman Wilson could be the chess piece in this passing game. I think he's got that type of upside. I'm a massive fan of Roman Wilson and what he brings to the Pittsburgh Steelers and what he's going to be able to bring long-term to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Plus, just an immediate thing. I mean, if the Steelers are going to run the football, and they are going to run the like, you don't build an offensive line the way that you just built an offensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers and say, oh, we're going to throw the football all the time. You're going to run the football. And to have Roman Wilson, who might be the best blocking wide receiver in the NFL draft, I mean, that's a massive gain for the Steelers. And then signing-wise, I mean, Beanie Bishop's the easy one. Like, I agree with you 100%. That dude is a stud. I am shocked that he did not get drafted. I'm more shocked that the Steelers went with a guy like Ryan Watts over Beanie Bishop. They must have had some insight that he was not going to get drafted in this one. All-American last year. I mean, this dude's going to come in here, and I think he really does. I think he's got an instant shot at the slot corner position, and he's got Mike Hilton vibes. He gives me the Mike Hilton undrafted, could come in here and immediately make an impact type of situation. I think that he's going to be a fan favorite. I get it, he's a West Virginia guy, but I think that's okay. I'm a big fan of Beanie Bishop. I would say Roman Wilson and Beanie Bishop are my go-tos here.
The theme of the weekend was getting guys well past where they were kind of projected to go, where they probably should have gone. I mean, like even Fautanu all the way down to Bishop. I mean, none of these guys I think were expected to be in the positions that they were when the Steelers drafted them. And I think everyone kind of expected a trade at some point, and there just wasn't. It was a somewhat, not a boring draft, that's the wrong word, but it was a I don't know, for at least the Steelers, it was pretty ordinary,
Yes.
Like nothing crazy happened. It was just good players falling to them at positions where you didn't really expect them to fall to them. And that applies even to a guy like Bishop in the undrafted free agent kind of market.
Yeah, I agree. We expected more excitement, I would say. It didn't happen, and it still turned out to be, I think, a better draft class than anybody could have expected this draft class to turn into. Nick, I'm going to send it to you again. Your favorite draftee and or signing this past weekend?
I mean, my favorite draftee is a little chalk. It's Fautanu, but not just because you bring in a guy that's immensely talented, not just because you bring in a guy that can play multiple positions, but you also put yourself in a position to get more out of your first round pick from last year. You put Broderick Jones back where he's supposed to be, and all of a sudden that one pick turns into something that could help your line in two different spots. But I'm the most intrigued by Mason McCormick. I mean, anybody that posts their own hype video, and then you also saw the draft video whenever his reaction, there were so many different types of chairs in that, I'm assuming, like, upscale barn is from what it looked like in South Dakota, but the amount of different types of chairs in there, I'm very intrigued to see what Mason McCormick actually is. Not to mention, I mean, the neck protector as well is certainly gives you a part of an enigma that I'm interested to see what it looks like.
Yeah, 100%. We were talking to Pat Meyer after the draft. A couple of the media guys, me and Steven were there, and he said that he called Mason after, like, a couple hours after the draft, like, everything calmed down, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "I'm just grilling some walleye." And I'm just like, that's just as South Dakota as it gets, man. Like, he's like, he had his draft party, and it had to be an upscale barn. Maybe, I don't know, maybe like a Legion, an American Legion. It was something. Like, I thought it was a shipping container. I looked at it and went, that's just a giant shipping container that they're hanging out in with an elk head on the wall. I very much so agree with you. I think Mason McCormick is as interesting as it gets. Or Steven, I'm going to ask you this. What do you think it means? What do you think the Mason McCormick pick means for the Steelers offensive line? Because I think that's what the question was, is, okay, like, they got all their positions. Now they're grabbing another guard, and you're thinking, there's got to be a reasoning here, right?
Sorry, we lost you for a second. But
no, my bad.
I'll just pick up from where I assumed you.
Yeah.
I think the Mason McCormick pick is really interesting. I'm glad you asked about this, because I was kind of thinking the same thing throughout this weekend, and then when I woke up again this morning, I like Isaac Seumalo, been very good for them.
Yes.
And been pretty durable too. Like, hasn't missed. I don't think he missed a game last year. He was sitting out of practices sometimes for vet days, but that's pretty standard. That's not surprising at all for a guy his age. I wonder if this is kind of the backup plan. I wonder if this is just assuming that, Isaac is gonna either end of this year, maybe end of next year, call it a career, maybe call it an end, maybe move on to something different. And this is where Mason McCormick would step in. I think that's the ideal situation to use a fourth-round pick on, to use a guy who came from a smaller school and may need a year to kind of acclimate to NFL competition, the size, the speed, and all of that. I think he's a good player, but I think he could definitely use a year or two, kind of a redshirt year to learn for some vets, and, like I said, catch up to everything that comes with being in the NFL. So that was where my mind first went, was that this guy is the Isaac Seumalo replacement. They're going to try to make that transition as seamless as possible whenever it does happen.
I agree. I look at it, people are talking James Daniels, or I think Isaac Seumalo, his contract ends in 2 seasons. Nate Herbig's contract ends at the end of this season. I look at it as maybe one of two ways. Like, it's either a replacement next year as the backup swing guard for the Steelers to replace Nate Herbig, and then in 2 years, or I guess 3 years, it is a potential starter at guard to replace Isaac Seumalo. I think that's the way that they might view this. I mean, you got it. Like, Isaac's 31 years old. He's gonna, by the time it's all over, he'll be pushing 34. Like, I think that's a good spot to start preparing. And I agree with you. I think a 4th-round pick, a guy that played at South Dakota State who has a ton of potential, could develop into something bigger. But for right now, it's good to not have any pressure for him to even be a backup. It's just, hey, you're the number 3. You might be active on game days, but you might not be active on game days. Nate Herbig's still around. And then we develop you into whatever. It's the same thing with Spencer Anderson. Like, I think those two can be pieces where the Steelers view them more long-term than right now, but because they don't have pressure, they could develop them. I think it was a great way to go about it. Like, you didn't pin yourself up to or put yourself in a corner. You just kind of prepared ahead of time. And I get it that people are going to bring up like, oh, you need other needs. Yeah, definitely. But if you found yourself with a missing guard, all the work that you just put into the offense now has another hole. Now you don't have to worry about that because you could try to develop Mason McCormick into something like that. And the Steelers have had a lot of success over the years doing those types of things. I agree with you, and I agree with you, Nick. I think it's the most fascinating pick. I think it's a dude who's going to be a stud for the Pittsburgh Steelers in a couple of years, and I'm excited to see where he is day one because he showed out during the East-West Shrine Bowl and really all that stuff. So I'm a big fan of McCormick. I mean, it's hard to not be a fan of anybody in this draft class. It's a pretty big place to be. I want to talk about Omar's words and a potential acquisition post NFL draft, but I want to ask this question because I think that's the bigger piece of where we stand right now. The NFL draft has come and gone. The Steelers definitely improved. I think a lot of people are giving them A's. I mean, our Nick Martin talked about how great of a draft class this is. Honestly, as crazy as it sounds, his only poor grade for the Steelers was Roman Wilson. I think he gave him a C+ for Roman Wilson just because he said, like, hey, look, they got a lot of slot guys. They don't really need another one. I got the logic, even if I don't agree with it. Where is their biggest hole? You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers right now and where they stand. I get it. They added a wide receiver, but maybe they need another one. They added a corner. They added 2 corners, but maybe they need another one. When you look at this roster, where is their biggest hole post NFL draft?
Yeah, I really think it's at that receiver spot. I kind of do agree with Nick to a certain extent. Like, they need an outside guy, and they need a guy who can be a real threat next season. Like, immediately, he has to be able to complement George Pickens. He has to be able to make plays, and I don't see that guy on the roster right now. Even with Wilson in there, I still think Wilson, he's got some versatility, but I really do think that he is best as a slot guy. I think that's the best way to use him. So I think the Steelers can really only make the most out of this offense if they get a guy who can play on the outside, a guy, like I said, can contribute right away. It can't just kind of be a depth piece. It can't be, a special team or anything like that. It's got to be a guy who is, I think the word thrown around earlier in the offseason was a proven wide receiver. I think that's exactly what you're looking for, someone who has been there and done that. And it doesn't seem like the Steelers have a guy like that. And it does kind of concern me, I think, at this point in the year. I mean, it doesn't seem like the trade market is particularly robust. The free agents, not really existent very much at this point. It's going to take some pretty hard work to get that guy for the Steelers.
Yeah, I agree that I think it's I'm not going to say I think it's wide receiver. I'm going to go a different route here, but I agree with what you're saying because I think it's one of their biggest needs. Easy is I see Roman Wilson as a starter, but you're going to bank on a 3rd round guy and George Pickens being your go-tos, and then Calvin Austin, which I expect a year out of Calvin Austin. I expect Calvin Austin to improve. I've been saying that for weeks now. I just expect a better offensive coordinator, a better game plan for his skill set. I mean, you go back last year, I was joking about this with you walking out of the NFL draft. You go back last year and you look at tape of Calvin Austin, like the dude's run blocking, and he's 5'3", 160 pounds, and they're like, you know what you should go do? Hit a linebacker. That would be the way to go about this. I don't know what Matt Canada was thinking. I don't think he'd ever even try to do that in Arthur Smith's offense, and I think they'll utilize him better. I think it comes down to like your faith in George Pickens. Is George Pickens a true number 1? And I don't think that he is yet. I think he could be there by the end of the season. I think he could be there at the start of the season. But right now, what we've seen, I don't know if that's the case. And you're going to bank on Roman Wilson being a good enough number 2 to have 2 number 2s as your starters. And then like a shot in the dark as a number 3. I agree. I think it's a massive hole. I don't know how you go about filling it. Maybe you go wide receiver trade, and we're gonna talk about that next because I think Omar Khan kind of gave us a hint of what's coming for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Guys, this is a public service announcement, and it is urgent. You think that you have mastered the look in sweatpants and joggers? Well, guess what, my friend? You have not. You are one step away from wearing pajamas in public, and your significant other is starting to think that you look like a slob. It's time to take your sexy ass and put it in some jeans. If you take anything away from today's show, it's that the perfect jean isn't just another pair of stiff, uncomfortable, nut-crushing pants. They have cracked the code on solving your denim difficulties, and it is time to rejoice. Check them out. Always looking good. The Perfect Jean makes great looking, perfect fitting jeans that are as comfortable as sweatpants and more stretchy than a kangaroo's pouch. It's made from a special denim fabric that's super soft, just like sweatpants, just like joggers, but it doesn't make you look like a slob. And the best part, they make 6 fits from skinny to thick. Waist sizes from 26 to 50 and lengths from 26 to 38. So whether you are a thick guy or a short king, or guess what, anything in between, they perfectly fit your body and accentuate your assets. Pun intended. Trust us when we say that these are truly fucking perfect jeans. Once you try them on, you'll never go back. Once again, boom. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjean.nyc, or just Google The Perfect Jean and use our code ALLSteelers15 for 15% off. Look it. I have been looking for a while. I have been talking to my fiance daily. I need to find a look. I've tried them all. I tried khakis. I tried joggers. I tried sweatpants. I tried shorts. Nothing fits me like the perfect jeans fit me. The Perfect Jean doesn't just stop there, though. They've revolutionized t-shirts as well. The Perfect Tee has just enough stretch to hide the beer belly while accentuating your arms and chest for that flawless look. It's soft like butter without shrinking in the wash like all your other t-shirts. It's just, perfect. The Perfect Jean always has free shipping, always has free exchanges, and always has free returns. So you can have peace of mind knowing that your order is completely risk-free. It's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Our listeners get 15% off your first order plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use our code ALLSteelers15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code ALLSteelers15. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please give us some support and tell them that we sent you. Fuck your khakis and get the Perfect Jean. I'm going to go the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to say corner, just because, I mean, you look at this and you say Beanie Bishop's awesome, and I have a lot of high expectations for Beanie Bishop. Even if Beanie Bishop was drafted, even if they took him in the 6th round, I'm not looking at a 6th round pick as a guy who's going to come in here and supposed to solve the Steelers' cornerback issues. You know, like that's just banking on way too much for a guy that we have no idea what's going on. I could see them still kind of looking at names like Chandon Sullivan and Patrick Peterson just because they need somebody. I could see them, walking into OTAs and we see a little Deshaun Elliott or DeMonte KZ playing the safety role. I have no idea what to expect. But I think that the way I look at corner right now is you still don't have a slot guy. You have options, and I think that's a good thing to have options and to give yourself more options. But there's nobody proven there to say this is an immediate, we have faith in this guy option for the Steelers right now. And I think that that's a massive hole in a league that is almost exclusively a passing league, and in a conference where you're going to go up against the Jamar Chases and Amari Coopers who play inside and outside, and you're going to find yourself facing guys that, like, you can't send Joey Porter Jr. inside and expect him to guard a Zay Flowers all the time and not get burnt once in a while against these teams.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you. I think that all makes a ton of sense, and I think you're spot on. I don't know if the Steelers see it that way, to be quite honest with you. I think judging from the way that they went about this draft, and I think, the McCormick pick kind of illustrates this. I think the Logan Lee pick kind of illustrated it a little bit further. I mean, even the Peyton Wilson one, I think to a certain extent, like, they didn't pick up corners in this draft. And I think I don't know, right or wrong, I think they are looking at Dante Jackson, Bishop, and Joey Porter Jr. as a perfectly fine trio of starting guys between two outside spots and a slot. I don't know if they're looking to add more to this cornerback room at this point. So that would be the only reason why I say. I mean, it can look like a huge need for the Steelers. I just don't know if they see it that way.
I can't disagree with you that way or with that. I think that they kind of showed their hand a little bit. And I think what's cool about that is it was very clear this past weekend that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going back to Pittsburgh Steelers football. You know, they're done playing around. They're done trying to be a team that's trying to chase the Kansas City Chiefs. They're just, hey, everybody else is zigging. We're going to zag. We're going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're going to be hard-nosed football. And the Pittsburgh Steelers win up front always. That's always how they've won on both sides of the football. And they kind of showed, like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. You know, last year our up front looked really good outside of inside linebackers. Okay, let's go get a couple of inside linebackers. Let's make that work. You know, we got another corner. Awesome. We're good on corner. I agree with you. I think that the way that they showcased is that we're going back to old school football. I mean, that's why I wore the Jalen Warren shirt today, because I feel like if anybody was going to be happy about this weekend, it's Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. They got to be pumped about where the Pittsburgh Steelers are right now. I think it could work. Like, as crazy as it sounds, like, you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and everybody's going to say, like, oh, but they, like, what are they going to do? Run the football on every play? Hopefully. Like, hopefully that's exactly what they do. Hopefully the time of possession for the Pittsburgh Steelers is twice as long as the other teams. Hopefully they end up with, you know, a rushing defense that is first in the NFL and 25 plus sacks on the season, because, or 35, 40 sacks on the season, because that's what they've built themselves to do. Like, that's how they're going to win. And I think that that is a great idea. Stop trying to beat these teams the way these other teams play and just be the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's worked in the past, and I don't care how much football's evolved. I think it could work now. Like, I really genuinely think it could work now. So I agree with you. Which kind of takes us to, I think, the next part of this. Where the Steelers stand. Where draft is come and gone. We've talked holes. We've talked favorite places, our favorite picks, favorite signings, everything that the Steelers have done. I mean, it's the Monday after the NFL draft. There are a billion things that are going to happen between now and the first weekend of September. But in your eyes, where do the Pittsburgh Steelers stand as of April 29th?
Yeah, they look like a team to me that can, you know, I don't think they're in that first tier of, like, you know, of AFC teams in terms of, you know, Kansas City or Ravens, or, I mean, I'd even put the Houston Texans up there right now after all the offseason additions they made.
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, you know, the Bills kind of fell off a little bit. Like, I'm not super confident in the Bills. Like, they lost a ton of talent and didn't seem to have any interest in replacing it. I think you can say the Tennessee Titans are pushing, but they don't really seem like they have a ton of pieces that all fit together. They still have some holes as well. Like, I think the Steelers can be a team that pushes for the AFC Championship game. Like, if they get the right matchup, like if they end up drawing the Ravens in the divisional round or something like that, like the idea that they couldn't, they've had the Ravens upper hand for a long time. So I see this as a team that can at least make it to an AFC Championship game. I wouldn't pick them against Patrick Mahomes in many scenarios. So I can't really imagine picking them to make a Super Bowl at this point. But I mean, it was very clear what their needs were going into this draft, what their biggest needs were, and they addressed most, if not all of them, with still a decent chunk of the offseason left to go. So I'm more confident in them than I was before, and I was still pretty confident after their first free agency period about what they had added and what they had made happen. So I'm very high on this team. I'm very high on this roster. Like you said, I think they have showed their hand a little bit, and they showed you what they're going to be, or at least they told you what they want to be. And I still think there's room for that in the NFL. I mean, I think, you know, we've seen over the past couple seasons that there's been a little bit of a rebirth in terms of the kind of ball control, ground and pound. Like, running backs have value again. Offensive lines have value again. Defenses have a ton of value again. Like, it's weird. The Kansas City Chiefs winning this past Super Bowl, it wasn't really, you know, Patrick Mahomes and the offense weren't really the star of the show. It was their defense that was really the better unit on this team. So I think having an offense that is good enough and a defense that is elite is a way to win. It's a formula for winning in the NFL. And the Steelers are going to chase that formula this season, it seems like.
Yeah, look at I think that's spot on. It's way too early to say Super Bowl. It's way too early to say Super Bowl for any team except for the Kansas City Chiefs. For any of them. Like, you could talk San Francisco for it. You could talk any team. The only team that you could say, if I had to put my money on them winning the Super Bowl today, I feel good about it, is the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, that's just being realistic. A team that could compete in the AFC, I think, is exactly where the Steelers are, who I am not looking at this team as a team that's barely going to find their way into the postseason. I think this is a team that could garner the respect of the NFL for the first time in a long time. That could walk into a season and you are actually somewhat nervous to play the Steelers, where you're like, okay, this could be like, they have the upside to do a lot of big things. I think that's where the Steelers stand. They've done everything perfect. And just like I said, just like you said, you did it your way. Like, the Steelers did it the Steelers way. They had a plan. That's the coolest part about this offseason is, I don't know if it's Omar Khan. I don't know if it was Art Rooney. I don't know if it was a wake-up call during the playoffs. I have no idea what it was. But the Steelers put a plan in place after the season ended, and they have executed that plan with almost perfection throughout the offseason. Like, it's wild to watch. And the craziest part is, like, for the first time in a while, at least, it feels like all of us and all of the fans were able to identify exactly how the Steelers should go about their offseason this year. And we watched it all come to place. And you're like, look at that. They're not thinking too hard about this. They understand exactly what's going on because it's clear as day what's going on. And they just went and they fixed it. I think that right now it's just like you said, it's too early to say Super Bowl. You don't know anything about it. You've never seen them play together. There is a long way to go. Anything could happen. But a team that could compete in the AFC, I think I feel really good about. And I think that, optimistic fans will tell you that there's a shot, and, non-optimistic fans will tell you, like, worst case scenario, this team's definitely a playoff team. They definitely look like a playoff team, and I think that's a great place to be.
Right, because I think I look at them, and I think this is kind of connected to the idea that they're going back to kind of traditional Steelers football. Is I think they raised their floor quite a bit.
Yes,
I don't think you are going to see, even in a worst case scenario, losses to multiple 3-win teams in back-to-back weeks like we did last year.
Yes.
You're not getting Patriots and Cardinals losses, especially back-to-back. You're not getting multiple of those, I think, this year. I think they're just going to be simply too physical up front. The defense is too good and too deep and too complete. And I think the offense is going to, just by nature of being able to control the clock, being able to run the football, like having a little bit more, I don't know. I'm going to say competence because that's the only word that comes to mind.
It's true, though, yeah.
It's just like the floor is so much higher for this team, and they've already established the floor is pretty damn high for them. Like last year, I feel like you talked to Steelers fans, and last year was an unmitigated disaster for 14 or 15 weeks, and then the last 3 weeks of the year kind of revived things a little bit. I don't think you're going to look at it that way this year. Like for a team that still won 10 games last year in the regular season, you're you can already count out at least one of those losses to Arizona or New England or anything like to a 3-win to a team that picked in the top 5. Like I just think the steps that they needed to take to get better and to become a 12-win team, a 13-win team, they made, and they can eliminate some of the small, like, silly mistakes and the small silly slip ups because of the way that they're going to play next year.
Yeah, I agree. So that takes us to the final piece of the puzzle here, the final thing that came from the NFL draft, the final thing anybody wants to talk about right now, and that is what's next. Where do the Pittsburgh Steelers go from here? And Omar Khan was asked very firmly, hey, what's going on with wide receiver? Do you feel good about wide receiver? Is that where we're going next? And he said, well, quote, we'll see. Like I've said, if there's ever an opportunity to improve the team, we'll look at it. And if it makes sense, we're going to go after it. But yeah, we restructured Alex Highsmith's contract, and it puts us in a position to be flexible with some of the things if there's an opportunity to do so. We were sitting right there, and I think we both had a little bit of the same thought. So I want to hear you say it. What went through your head when that came out of Omar Khan's mouth?
they're 100% still looking to make a move. But they are in, active talks. I think they are
Yes.
getting annoying to the 49ers right at this point, just calling just about every day, asking about if is one of those receivers eligible to be traded. I bet they're annoying the Denver Broncos too. I bet they're working on really blowing up their phones a lot as well. Omar Khan's never one to tip his hand that much
No.
in a press conference like that or in a setting like that. But I think I think there was enough there that if you read between the lines, if you have listened to Omar Khan speak enough, that he left the door. Him leaving the door open is him saying we're being really aggressive. Is his version of saying we're being really aggressive in this market. So
Yes.
I don't think the fact that they didn't trade for Cortland Sutton or Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk means that they aren't interested in those players. I just think that there wasn't a deal that the 49ers or Broncos were willing to respond to. And, maybe after the draft, I was looking at the Denver Broncos picks. They drafted 2 wide receivers. They took Troy Franklin pretty early. I don't know. Maybe they are preparing for life without Cortland Sutton. Maybe they just need to have those pieces in place before they moved on. I'm not ruling out a receiver trade at all. I think we've said before, too, that, especially for the 49ers, like one of those trades could come way into training camp. It could be a late addition. It's not something that you need to rule out just because time is wearing on. In fact, I think as time goes on, the idea that a trade is becoming more likely, I think that's what I'm going with.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. They didn't do it in the draft. I don't think they wanted to do it in the draft. I think they wanted to do it on day 2, maybe day 3 of the NFL draft. I think once every team was like, nah, that's too low, they said, that's fine. We'll wait it out. We'll wait till a month from now, 2 months from now. We'll wait till training camp. I think Brandon Ayuk and Deebo are still very much so on the table. Cortland Sutton's the guy that I think, if we want to start talking about a realistic, this could probably happen for the Steelers, Cortland Sutton just makes too much sense. Too much sense. The Denver Broncos did not give away their hand at all. They drafted a quarterback, and immediately everybody went, oh, okay, well, they want Cortland Sutton to stick around. They want a veteran guy for their guy. Okay, yeah. Then they added 2 wide receivers, including Troy Franklin, and you go, okay, well, now their wide receiver room includes Cortland Sutton, Denzel Mims, Tim Patrick, Lil Jordan Humphreys, Troy Franklin, and, another rookie, and you're going, okay, that's a lot of wide receivers. You're not going to keep all those wide receivers. Who are you going to get rid of? You're going to get rid of Lil Jordan Humphrey. He started for you next year. You're not going to get rid of Denzel Mims. Who are you going to get rid of? Cortland Sutton. That's who you're going to get rid of. They've been looking to get rid of him for a while. His cap hits over the next 2 years are $13 million and $13.5 million. He's got $3 million left in guaranteed money. The Steelers are sitting there going, we can make that move and we got money to spend. We still have money to spend after that. Like, why would we not make that move? Plus, he's going to be cheap. And I think during the draft, his stock rises. You could look at him and say, hey, this is a 3rd-round pick. I think a month from now, Cortland Sutton gets dealt for a 5th, maybe a 6th-round pick for the Steelers, because at that point, the Broncos, they didn't make a move when it was timely, and I get that, and I think that was possibly their fault, but also possibly both sides' fault. I think a month from now, the Steelers call, and they could say, hey, look, we'll just give you something. Who cares? You want that money anyways. Go sign somebody else. I think I think a Cortland Sutton trade is very much so on the table for the Pittsburgh Steelers and very, very realistic at this point.
Yeah, if not, likely. I don't know. It seems like I don't know. I haven't heard of any other team connected to a Cortland Sutton trade.
Nope, none. And I look at it and say this is, they're just waiting. They're just waiting. So I would say that's a very, just like you said, possibly likely situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's just a matter of time. And it could happen any day now, but I would imagine the more time that passes and people are going to say, oh, we're overhyping this. I wouldn't rule it out until day 1 of the NFL season. When they walk into week 1 and there is no Cortland Sutton on the Steelers roster, that's when you go, okay, all right, well, there it is. It's gone. We missed it. But before, right up until then.
And then he gets moved in week 5. And then
yeah, because the Steelers realize they need a wide receiver. That's it makes too much sense. The Broncos, they did not do a good job at hiding anything, and you can say whatever you want, but Benjamin Albright's sitting around saying they've been trying to move him for a year now, and they got rid of Jerry Jeudy, who was a little bit just about as expensive and younger and probably had more upside, and it just makes too much sense to sit here and say Cortland Sutton's going to be gone from the Denver Broncos and probably on the Steelers roster anytime between now and the first weekend of September, and probably after that as well, depending on how George Pickens and Roman Wilson play together in week 1. So I'm not ruling it out. With that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow to talk more NFL draft and what is to come with this rookie class and the rest of the Pittsburgh Steelers roster. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.